All right, so we're going to call the meeting to order. Sorry, we're a minute late. I think everybody's in. Can everyone hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Sam can hear me, then I assume everyone can.
I hear you. This is Elizabeth. I'm going to mute my mic at the personal level. So.
Okay.
I have some housekeeping, Mr. Chair, somebody is in the room just simply as admin, not LP host admin. I need to know who that is so I can assign them a name. LP host admin is me. I'm both Karen Ann and LP host admin. There should be no one else.
2 pages of the gallery.
Yeah, no one else should be in here under the name admin. So I'm just curious who that is.
Looks like it's Sam.
Okay, I'll change that then.
Oh, yep, that is true.
Hey, Karen Ann, this is Richard. I'm on via phone right now, but I am trying to get on the computer. So if you see me double, that's what's going on.
What number are you in on?
What number? I'm not sure. What do you mean?
What area code?
931.
Okay, I can't. All right, thank you.
Yep.
Okay. All right, so is that all the housekeeping you had, Karen Ann?
Yeah, for right now, I'm just trying to get everyone named on here.
Okay, at this point, everyone's unmuted, so we'll take 5 minutes for public comment. Mr. Redpath, are you keeping time? He is not, but that's okay. I know 5 minutes. Is there anyone who would like to comment? And is there a way that they raise their hand or no?
Yes, there is. If you hit the participant screen, it pulls up the floating window, and you have a raise hand option.
There we go. I see it. All right. So if anyone would like to make public comment, please use the raise hand option. And I am not seeing anyone. And so we will get our time back by ending public comment early. That was easy. So next is attendance, credentials, and paperwork check. Seems like attendance is handled automatically by the software. Does that work for you, Karen Ann?
I would like to call it out just to make sure I have everybody on my voting sheet.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay, I have Mr. Bishop Henchman, Mr. Goldstein, Mr. Hagan, Ms. Harlos, Mr. Hewitt, along with alternate Dr. Olson, Dr. Lark, Ms. Matson, Mr. O'Donnell, Mr. Phillips, Mr. Redpath, Mr. Starwork, Mr. Smith, and Ms. Van Horn. Did I miss anyone? Okay, I have it.
So the only one we're missing, are we missing Mr. Merced?
We are.
Okay. Is that the only voting member of the LNC that's missing?
I do not see Mr. Nikala. Ms. Bill Yu. Or their alternates.
Okay. All right, well, then that takes care of attendance. The OneNote link is in the chat window, and I think had been sent around by email. I don't think there's any other paperwork. There's a short proposed agenda, but it's a tight meeting, so it wasn't very long. And so if there's no objection, we'll move into adoption of the agenda.
I have up on the screen your proposed agenda minus the things that people already requested to be stricken.
Sorry, just a second. I have to.
Kieran, make that any bigger?
You can on your screen. It's as big as it can be on mine.
So what did we strike? Oh, okay, I see it. Sorry, I have to move my participants window to see your screen. Goals. So we struck the election results. And we struck the stylistic cleanup, is that right? Those are the only two things I see struck from my original proposed to this one, which brings us down in time so that we'll be inside of 2 hours. We follow our timelines. Is there any objection to adopting that agenda? Hearing no objection, the agenda will be adopted. I did note that Ms. Mattson pointed out that adding something to the agenda that was not in the call of the meeting, which was to resolve the business that was not handled in person, would be a violation of our rules, and I appreciate the reminder. We don't do enough electronic meetings for me to remember that off the top of my head, so I apologize for being incorrect on that. So the next item is discussion of 2019 goals. That's for 30 minutes, and we are starting it at 1:07 or 1:08, depending on whose watch is right.
Mr. Chairman, this is Bill Redpath. I'll be happy to keep time.
Thank you, Mr. Redpath. All right. We will use the hand-raising software for the people to be recognized for this discussion.
Okay, I'm sorry. Well, how do we do that, Mr. Chairman?
Yeah, so there is a participants button at the bottom of your software next to invite, between invite and share. You pull up the participants window, there is a button that says raise hand, and there's also one that says mute me.
I see. Got it. Thank you.
And if somebody can do a hand raise to start off the discussion, I just want to see if it pops up to the top of my, good. Whoa, geez, that's a lot. Okay, everyone's hands raising works really, really well. I just wanted to make sure it popped up to the top of my participants window because it doesn't show everybody all at once. So who would like to start off the goals discussion? Ms. Harlos?
Yes, since no one else was jumping to the front, I think perhaps we should agree upon some kind of structure rather than a free-for-all. There were notes put in the goals discussion tab of the OneNote. Mr. Merced, myself, and Mr. Bishop Henchman had forwarded some notes. Mr. Bishop's Henchman's is very granular on the management side, which is an angle to take, and I went more of an overview. But I think someone kind of needs to lead this discussion and then everyone give some input. I think that would be the most logical way to proceed.
I'm fine with that. Let me find that note.
And Mr. Lark sent some notes too much earlier, and I put that in there as well.
Okay.
Dr. Lark.
Dr. Lark, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Can you hear me?
I can.
One way to proceed, if you so desire, is I'd actually put forward several specific goals for the term. One way would be for me to make a motion to adopt those goals, and then we could proceed with a discussion. Assuming the motion is seconded, we could proceed in that way.
I don't have any objection to that procedure, so go ahead and make that motion.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move that the goals that I sent to the Libertarian National Committee in, I believe, July, that those goals be adopted by the LNC for this term.
Is there a second?
I am unclear on what he's actually moving.
If you,
I think
Mr. Chairman,
go ahead, Dr. Lark.
yes, if you look in the message I sent, I suggested several goals: goal 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. They're listed there in the message I sent.
I see it now. It's towards the bottom. I'll highlight them.
Okay, and for the benefit of anyone who is participating on the phone, goal 1, the LP will have at least 20,000 sustaining members as of May 1st, 2020. Goal 2, the LNC will take action to see that each state has an operational affiliate party by July 1, 2019. Goal 3, the LNC will raise at least $3.5 million from July 1, 2018 through May 1, 2020. Goal 4, the LNC will develop and approve new and revised outreach literature to be available no later than December 31, 2018. Goal 5, the LNC will sponsor a series of seminars and workshops in 2019 at various locations around the country.
Mr. Chairman, assuming that the motion receives a second, I will request that goal 4 be modified to reflect the fact that the December 31st, 2018 has already passed. Also, Mr. Chairman,
yes,
there is some sort of audio feedback that we're getting on here. It sounds like something out of a very bad Star Trek episode.
It's Mr. Hewitt. Mr. Hewitt, if you could mute yourself, thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
All right, is there a second for Dr. Lark's motion?
Mr. Bishop Henson typed it in his second.
Oh,
Yeah,
sorry.
yeah, I second.
Different screen. So Mr. Bishop Henchman second. So Dr. Lark, go ahead and speak to your motion.
Mr. Chairman, I outlined some of the reasons why I believe these are appropriate goals. I've actually discussed this with other members of the committee during, well, frankly, since July. Again, we'll need to modify goal 4 because of the fact that the December 31st, 2018 date has already passed. But I think that these are goals that are reasonable. These are goals over which the LNC actually has at least a decent amount of ability to bring into effect. And I think that they're quite reasonable.
Okay. Mr. Redpath.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, it's a point of inquiry. Do we have goals that were adopted for the last year or two, specifically the last year? Did we do something like this in December 2017? When was the last time goals were set? What were those goals and have they been met?
We did not set official goals for the last LNC term. We set the last time the LNC adopted goals officially was the 2014 through 2016 term. I think. Dr. Lark, are you?
That is my recollection, Mr. Chairman.
And then what were those goals and have they been met?
The goals from the 2014 term.
I do not recall them, Mr. Chairman, off the top of my head. I'd have to go back to my notes.
I will attempt to find them while the discussion's going on. Dr. Lark, would you like to continue to speak to your motion, or?
Mr. Chairman, I think that I have offered the necessary commentary. We'll be happy to answer questions if there are questions.
Okay. Mr. Redpath, are you still seeking to be recognized?
Yes.
Go ahead.
As people who've been on this committee may know, I'm not as goal-oriented as some other people are on this committee. I mean, for instance, goal 1 here, the LP will have at least 20,000 sustaining members as of May 1, 2020. I suppose why 20,000? I mean, it could be 25 or 30 or something like that. And the numeric goal on goal 3.5 million, it just disappeared. But in any event, something like that we're back and we're scrolling down. Thank you, Madam Secretary, if you're doing this. It's same with goal 3.5 million. We want as much money as possible. We want as many members as possible. I mean, I think a goal would be adopting certain procedures to maximize the number of members or the amount of money. I think something like number 2, operational affiliates, I think that's a more concrete goal. We want operational affiliates. I'd be satisfied with a goal to have a state chair in every state and return your phone call. I mean, for the love of Pete. And with respect to goal 4, the LNC, I don't know whether we need to. I think we ought to consider it. I don't know that we need to do it. I'm not up on exactly what outreach literature we have at this point, and a series of seminars and workshops. It sounds good, but I just think more specifics. I'm not with all. I recognize the spirit in which Dr. Lark forwards these, but I'm really not satisfied with these goals, and I don't think some of them are particularly helpful.
Mr. Goldstein.
I move to amend Dr. Lark's motion in, excuse me, I believe it's goal 4, to change the date when we need to revise literature to the 1st of September 2019.
Is there a second for that motion to amend?
This is Elizabeth. I'll second.
All right, it's been seconded. Mr. Goldstein, do you feel a need to speak to your amendment?
Other than the fact that that gives us at least 2 LNC meetings to work through what we're going to revise and update and who's going to do it, I think that gives us adequate time to get it done in time for the election cycle in 2020.
Okay. Would anyone like to speak against the amendment? Ms. Van Horn, I take it you're not trying to speak against the amendment, and this hand raising system is a little complicated, but
correct. I didn't realize my hand was still up. I'll
that's
try to
okay.
fix that. Okay.
Mr. Phillips, are you attempting to speak against the amendment or for it?
Just a point of inquiry. I missed the. I missed the.
Sorry, you cut off right at the end there. You missed the date? September 1, 2019. And Mr. Phillips, your microphone, is it still working? I'm going to go with no, or he's not talking anymore. So we will assume that your question got answered. If there's not, I got you back.
Hear me?
Yeah, not really. He's going to keep working. Okay. Ms. Mattson, are you seeking to be recognized to speak against the amendment or for the amendment?
Just to point out that Jeff Lyons had raised some questions in the chat about details of some of the goals.
Okay. Let's dispose of the amendment that puts the date in the future instead of the past, assuming there's no further discussion. Is there... Ms. Harlos, I don't think that there's going to be a need for an actual vote on this, but what is your proposed method for voting in this meeting for when we get there?
Well, we could do hand raise, or if there's, hopefully there'll be a lot of unanimous consent, but I have a voting sheet set up to record people's votes.
Okay.
It would probably be easier to do verbal roll call actually though for record purposes.
Okay, then that's fine. If there's no objection to Mr. Goldstein's amendment, it will be adopted. If you object, please raise your hand or say something. Seeing no hands raised, with the assumption that Ms. Van Horn's hand is up incorrectly, we'll adopt Mr. Goldstein's amendment and then proceed back to the discussion. I'm going to recognize Ms. Van Horn, and then I'm going to address the issues, or rather read the questions that Mr. Lyons had. Go ahead, Ms. Van Horn.
Yeah, my hand isn't up on my screen, so I don't know why you're saying that.
Do you have the raise hand button in front of you?
I do.
Try and raise it.
I just clicked it, and I don't see anything changed on my screen, but I see Jim Lark and Bill Redpath with raised hands. So I don't know if I have some lag here or what, but
your screen is probably not updating because right now I do not have Dr. Lark or Mr. Redpath up.
Okay, well, my hand is not officially raised, so carry on. I'm going to mute my mic. Okay.
All right, then Mr. Lyons asks, as far as goal 1, the exact number of members. With regard to goal 2, definition of operational, and more, whether or not that's more than simply the affiliate existing in a technical sense. And with goal 5, what approximate proposed budget would be there for the seminars. If someone can find the number of members from the last membership report, that would be helpful, and please raise your hand. I don't have it in front of me, and I'm still looking for the older goals.
Mr. Chairman, Lauren posted in the chat, it's about 15,000.
Okay, so approximately 15,000. As far as the definition of operational affiliates, I believe Dr. Lark indicated that would be defined as a properly maintained website for the affiliate, at least one LP member in the state who actively serves an official contact for the affiliate in dealing with the LNC, and one who is the active contact for the affiliate in dealing with state government, as long as that exists. And that the headquarters has a copy of the current bylaws and associated documents for the affiliate, along with the relevant laws of the state regarding political parties and ballot access. So that's the definition. And then Dr. Lark, if you could let us know an approximate budget you think for the series of seminars and workshops.
Mr. Chairman, to some extent, this would be based upon how many seminars we wish to do. We would have to seek from our members and the various state affiliates to what extent they want to participate. The purpose of the seminars is to help our state affiliates, and so what I would propose is that we would contact our state affiliates. We would give them an idea of how we basically wish to proceed. And we want to see to what extent do we feel. I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman, I'm still getting an enormous amount of audio feedback here.
I believe the audio feedback is gone now. It was being corrected right as you said something, so please continue.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. My anticipation is that one of these events should not cost more than, I would think, $5,000 at the maximum. And based upon my experiences from both the 97 and 99 success events, I would think that we would be able to get those down to no more than $2,500, that participants would pay a nominal fee to participate. But this is something that would have to be worked out with our state affiliates, because again, the purpose of this is to try to help them in various ways. I should note that in 97, when this was done, that the arrangements, I think, with National, that basically National went to various state parties and tried to make arrangements in central locations, central in the sense that a given states, for example, Indianapolis was considered central for many of the states that had people interested. And so one of the seminars was conducted, it was very successful. Austin, Texas. Of course, Texas is large enough that a seminar in Austin drew enough people simply from Texas. But the idea is to try to find locations where there is an interest in participation, where we think that we would find enough people who want to participate in these various seminars. We would have to, I would anticipate that we would have to take 3 or so months trying to find suitable locations for these. And so the budget would actually be something we would be working out as we seek to find whether or not there really is the interest. It very well may turn out that there is insufficient interest for us to hold any of these.
Okay. So from what you've said and the fact that we are already in Q1, I would anticipate that we would have between 3 and 4 of these seminars should we adopt the goal and start working towards them. And if you estimate that there'd be less than $5,000, that would put the budget at 15,000 plus or minus, hopefully to the minus. So I think that answers the question. Mr. Phillips was next, seeking to be recognized with his hand up. Go ahead, Mr. Phillips.
Mr. Chairman, I just wanted to say 39 minutes after the hour is when this expires, okay?
Okay, thank you. So we have 10 minutes left.
Can you hear me now?
I can hear you now, Mr. Phillips. Go ahead.
Okay, I just wanted to point out, Kara Schultz has been working on a lot of these seminars and things and has got some forward-going plans for things. And I believe I saw her in the audience, and she might have a more solid number on that budget.
If there's no objection to hearing from Ms. Schultz, and if Ms. Schultz wants to add, Ms. Schultz, go ahead.
I have been in contact with different states and regions on interest in doing this, and it does look like 3 of our regions are very solid on wanting this, meaning a majority of the states within those regions say yes, this is something that they very much want. In one other region, we're not quite to a majority, but it does appear that there is interest in it, and in both areas, which is development for candidates and campaign teams, but also for affiliate development and how they can do a better job in their officer positions, that type of thing.
Does the $5,000 per event budget seem correct to you, or is it off by how much and which way?
You know, $5,000 would definitely get it done. That's a very comfortable budget. You could definitely do that and have a very quality event for speakers and for presenters, definitely.
Okay, so if it's off high, not off low.
I believe so, yeah.
Okay, then we'll proceed to Ms. Mattson.
I want to remind my colleagues, we've recently got an email from our executive director, Ms. Doherty, that we're over 100,000, possibly as much as 120 or 130,000 in the hole right now. So I'm not inclined to adopt a goal of spending money on new programs until we fix the spending that we've already done and dig ourselves out of that. So I'm going to move to strike goal number 5 from our list. And once we get out of this hole, if we want to come back to that, that's fine. But my motion is to strike goal 5.
I'll second that.
So it's a motion to amend the motion to strike goal number 5. There's a second from Mr. Redpath. As a point of information, I believe the accounts payable as of the last update I got, which I want to say is today or yesterday, is just under 100,000, but not under by more than a couple grand. So I just want to make sure everyone's working with the right numbers. It's moved and seconded to make the amendment. Ms. Mattson, did you need to speak to it more than you did with the introduction?
I'll only add, it's not that I disagree with the idea. It's purely based on our current financial status.
Okay. Would anyone like to speak against the amendment? And I'm going to go to Mr. O'Donnell. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd just like to point out there's ways that we can host these seminars in conjunction with other organizations that would be cost neutral to the party. I do see a huge benefit to having these. Mr. Lyons has been scheduling them more regularly and doing them on a local level in Massachusetts, where he's recently been elected state chair. And we're looking to emulate that model in New Hampshire and moving into Maine as well. But there are organizations like the Leadership Institute that are willing to work with us. They do charge a nominal fee for participation, but it's at no cost to the party. We also have other partner organizations like LSLA who could help with organization of these and minimize the cost to the party. I wouldn't necessarily say eliminating the goal altogether, but maybe refining the goal so we're not putting ourselves in a bigger budgetary hole. But this is something that I would like to see the party do more of.
Okay. I'm going to recognize Ms. Bilyeu, but before I do, I did find the minutes from the September 20 to 21, 2014 LNC session, which was the last time we adopted goals. There were 6 goals adopted for the 2014 through 2016 term. 1,000 candidates in 2016, taking action to see that each state has an operational affiliate by June 1, 2015, 300 candidates by 2016 trained in who's driving or something equivalent, updated issue-based outreach literature, 38 state party status ballot access as of December 1, 2016, and 200 elected Libertarian officials as of December 1, 2016. Or December 2016. To my knowledge, I don't think we accomplished any of those goals completely. As I recall, I think candidates was not up to 1,000 or even real close. The operational affiliates, we had more than we did before. The 300 candidates training, I don't know as we kept good records. I know we did update some of the issue-based outreach literature, and we were in the 30s as of December 1 of 2016, but I don't think we made 38 states of party status ballot access. And I think our elected officials as of December 2016 was in the high 100s, over 150, but less than 200. So, Ms. Bilyeu, go ahead.
Yeah, I guess my concerns were raised already, but it was with regard to staff and funds. Staff, we recently just had to make some adjustments with staff, and I have a concern that the staff members who might be working on this, I want to know how this is going to impact what is already in their contract that they should be doing, considering that we are now with limited hours due to limited budget for staff.
Is that a question or a concern?
Yes, it is a question. How is that going to be addressed here? And I guess my inclination is to not support this project because I don't know that it actually exists already in a contract for any of our staff members. And I would want to make sure that it's not impacting what is already slated for them to be doing without adding additional hours and costs. So I guess my question is, has that been considered, and is it? What's the solution for it?
Okay. I think that's most appropriately answered by Ms. Doherty. And she's on the phone. Go ahead, Ms. Doherty. Lauren, is your phone muted on your end? I see that She looks like she's unmuted in the software, but I am not getting audio from her phone connection. She's not muted. Okay. But I cannot hear you, Lauren. And she's typing into the chat since we are having trouble with the audio side of it. So give it a moment. Kara's current contract, her top goal is recruiting 200 candidates, and she is part-time. Seminars are not currently part of the contract for 2019. I think that answers. The contract indicates recruiting candidates and assisting them. So to answer your question, Whitney, it's not specifically, the seminars are not specifically part of the contract, but to the extent the seminars would be helpful in, or would work towards recruiting and assisting candidates, they could be part of what her goal is under the revised 2019 contract.
Without increasing hours? So much time that we can afford.
The hours are different from there's the goal side of it and there's the hours side of it. So,
okay.
You know, we've given her fewer hours to do 200 candidates and get them recruited. So that's kind of where that's at. Ms. Harlos.
I need to unmute. I'm speaking against striking that, and if that is voted down, I would be proposing an amendment to add language to make it as soon as it's possible within our budget. I think we can retweak this goal and face the reality of our budget without striking it entirely.
Okay. Dr. Lark.
Mr. Chairman, I have no problem with striking this as a goal with the understanding that we can continue, we can bring this back up at some point. Let me also note, by the way, that at no point was I suggesting that we have to pay the entire freight. Several members have suggested that we use the good offices of other organizations. That's fine with me. In fact, that was part of my intention. The $5,000 figure I gave was an upper bound with one which would have all bells and whistles. I have absolutely no problem with allowing other organizations, if they wish to pay a large part of the freight, that's fine with me.
And to just add to that point, just so everyone's clear in the discussion, the goal itself does not carry a budget with it. The goal is a goal. The approximate budget was in response to a question that Mr. Lyons had.
And time on this agenda item is up.
Time has expired on the agenda item. Is there a motion to extend?
Yes, motion to extend for 10 minutes.
Mr. Phillips moves to extend for 10 minutes. Is there objection?
Objection.
There's objection from Mr. Redpath. Everyone undo your hand raises so that anyone whose hand is up right now, and I note Ms. Bilyeu and Mr. Phillips still have it up. All right, so all in favor of extending for 10 minutes, please raise your hand. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I have 6 in favor. Is there anyone who is a voting member who is not in the video call? I have now 7 in favor. Is there anyone who is a voting member who is not in the video call who wishes to raise their hand? Hearing none, please undo your hand raises. I had counted 7. All opposed, please raise your hand. I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, but I am only counting 4 because Ms. Van Horn had her hand raised for the extension. So I have 7 to 4. That sorry, what was that question? It would need to be 8 to 4 to succeed. Is that correct?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, it requires 2/3.
All right. I will break that tie in favor of the discussion for 10 minutes. And so we will be extended for 10 minutes. People seeking to be recognized to speak to the current amendment is Ms. Matson's amendment to strike goal number, I don't remember the number of it, but the one with candidate seminars. I think it's 5. Is that 5?
It's goal 5, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Ms. Van Horn, you're recognized.
I do not have my hand raised. I
Okay.
I don't know why it
That
will
hand
not let
raising
me.
thing is
It's broken
troublesome for you.
somehow. Yes.
Got it.
If someone is able to lower it for me, that would be great.
You're
Karen.
back down. Mr. Phillips.
Yeah, I would like to speak against the amendment.
Go ahead.
As has already been pointed out, there is no actual budget in the goal. It is just a goal to have these seminars. Also, has also been pointed out, it could be revenue neutral. As a matter of fact, I have taken part in several where we charged anywhere from $25 to $150 to attend per person, which could easily offset any costs.
Okay. Anyone else wishing to speak for the motion, or for the amendment rather? Anyone else wishing to speak against the amendment? Seeing no further discussion, we'll move to a vote on the amendment. The amendment is to strike goal number 5 from the proposal, the candidate seminars. All in favor of the amendment, striking goal number 5, please raise your hand. I see Matson, Redpath, Bishop Henchman, and Hewitt. That is 4. Also Bilyeu, that is 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I have 5 in favor of the amendment. Please take your hands down. All those opposed to the, Ms. Bilyeu, your hand is lagging, but I know that you voted in favor. All opposed, please raise your hand. This would be in opposition to the amendment. Please raise your hand. I have O'Donnell, Longstreth, Harlos, Goldstein, Phillips, Van Horn, and Hagen. I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 opposed. The amendment fails. With that, we return to discussion on the overall list of goals as amended with the Goldstein amendment to change the target date for the literature to September of 2019. Ms. Van Horn, are you seeking to be recognized, or are we having hand issues?
I am not seeking to be recognized.
Okay, Ms. Harlos.
Yes, I would move to amend to add 2 additional goals. I put them on the screen. So a goal 6 would be to target winnable critical issues with a game plan and resources, with examples such as alternative voting or targeting the death penalty as a single issue. And for each LNC member to develop personal goals and report on them at each meeting.
Okay. Is there a second for Karen Ann's amendment? I am not hearing a second, Ms. Harlos. I'm just looking to make sure I'm not missing anything in chat. I do not see a second. So that amendment will die for lack of a second. Is there a need for further discussion on Mr. Bishop Henchman? Go ahead.
Move to amend goal 2, excuse me, not goal 2, goal 3, the fundraising goal, to change the end date which is currently May 1, 2020 to be December 31, 2020.
There's a motion to amend to December 31, 2020. Is there a second? Mr. Goldstein, are you seconding? I'm assuming Mr. Goldstein is raising his hand for a second. Then go ahead, Mr. Bishop Henchman.
Currently, we're planning on raising in our budget 1.5 million this year. Assuming we have a really good year this year and a really good next year, we'll hit this goal by the end of 2020. The current goal by the end of May, which is about 16 months from now, 17 months from now. That's a great goal. I don't know how realistic it is. And, you know, I like reach goals. Those are good. But whoever's editing it, we're talking about goal 3, not goal 1. I like reach goals, but I also like realistic goals too. It's a good reach goal for by the end of 2020.
Would anyone like to speak against the amendment? I am Mr. Phillips.
I'm not speaking against it, more of a question. Isn't this goal supposed to be for our current term, and wouldn't our current term be over before December of 2020?
Our current term will be over before December of 2020. Our term will expire at the Austin Convention in 2020. Mr. Hagan.
Yeah, that's why I was going to pose this, is because that's after our term is over. I think the goal should be set for that this current term can do.
Okay.
Couldn't hear what was said.
Go ahead. Okay, Ms. Bilyeu. Is there anyone else who wishes to be recognized on this? Ms. Bilyeu, go ahead.
Yeah, I guess I like the amendment. However, my question is, can we still set that goal, and would it actually be, I guess none of them are really enforceable, but would it be, for lack of a better word, enforceable if we're no longer seated after May or after the convention?
We could theoretically achieve it by the middle of 2020, but we would no longer necessarily be LNC members at the time of the expiration of the goal. Anyone else seeking to be recognized on this? Mr. Bishop Henchman.
I recognize what people are saying about us no longer being on the term, the 17 of us not currently being on the LNC by that time, but the LNC will exist by then. And, we will have 2020 goals set, whether we're there or not. And honestly, it took us about until December this year to really get a handle, for at least the freshmen like me, to get a handle on what was going on. So I don't think it's realistic to expect the next LNC to set goals in the middle of 2020 to be able to cover this. And because it's goals, they can amend it. They can come in as soon as they take over and change the goals. It just, December 31st seems understandable. Election day seems understandable. The middle of May doesn't really seem like it doesn't really just make sense to me as a stopping point.
Okay. Anyone else seeking to be recognized? Seeing no one else seeking to be recognized, we'll move to a vote on the amendment. The amendment would be to amend goal number 3 to change May 1, 2020 to December 31, 2020. All in favor of the amendment, please raise your hand. I have Goldstein, Bishop Henchman, Phillips, Hewitt, Bilyeu, Van Horn, and O'Donnell. That is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 7 in favor. Please put your hands down. All of those opposed, please raise your hand. I have Harlos, Hagan, Longstreth, Matson, and Lark. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5 opposed. I had 7 in favor. The amendment passes. Is anyone else seeking to be recognized to discuss the underlying motion? Dr. Lark.
I'm lowering my hand.
Okay, sorry. Seeing no one else seeking to be recognized regarding this motion, I think we would move to a vote on adoption of the goals as amended? All in favor of adopting these goals as amended, please raise your hand. I have Hagan, Lark, Goldstein, Hewitt, Phillips.
I'm sorry to interrupt. I'm losing my screen, but I'm raising tech. Yes, I'm voting
Okay.
yes.
I have Hagan, Lark, Goldstein, Hewitt, Phillips, Harlos, Bishop Henchman, Longstreth, and Van Horn. That is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. I have 9 in favor.
Mr. Chair, can you hear me?
Yes, Mr. Smith.
Yeah, I also am in favor. I can't find the hand raising button yet.
If you go to the participants screen in the bottom, there is a raise hand button. I just want to see if it can be made to work. Yep, you got it now. So Hagan, Goldstein, Hewitt, that's 3. Phillips, Harlos, Longstreth, that's 6. Bishop, Henchman, Smith, Lark, that's 9. And Van Horn makes 10. I have 10 in favor. Please put your hands down. All opposed, please raise your hand. I have Ms. Harlos, can you put your hand down? Because I think I counted you on the other side.
1 second, sorry.
Okay. So I have Bilyeu opposed. I have 1 opposed. So I have 10 in favor, I have 1 opposed, and that is the vote. So the goals passes. We'll move to the next agenda item.
Mr. Chairman, this is Bill Redpath. I vote to abstain.
Yes, Mr. Redpath is an express abstention. All right, so, sorry, I gotta find my agenda. The next item will be discussion of the FASB, which I forget what it is, functional reporting requirements. This is Mr. Bishop Henchman's agenda item for a total of 10 minutes. Go ahead, Mr. Bishop Henchman.
Yeah, I sent out a document on this yesterday, just kind of putting together the basics of it. All nonprofits have to follow generally accepted accounting principles in order to get a clean audit, and the entity that produces those those principles is the FASB, the Financial Accounting Standards Board. For the first time in a generation, they've come up with revisions in financial reporting standards for nonprofits. As a result, we and many other nonprofits, every nonprofit is going to see differences in how a number of things are reported on documents going forward. And those are cash flow statements monitoring cash. Those are budgets, which monitor revenues and expenses. And then those are statements of financial position, which monitor assets and liabilities. I sent a document by email, which looks like the secretary has created a tab in the OneNote, which goes into more detail on it. The ones that really jump out for our purposes that I think everybody should be aware of is the change in standards on liquidity restrictions. So under the old rules, your assets and your liabilities, one that come with restrictions of some kind, either the donor has said, I want this to only be spent on this item, or for one of ours, of course, is a legal restriction on bequests from the Federal Election Commission, lawsuit pending. Under the old rules, you had to say whether these were temporarily restricted or permanently restricted or unrestricted. That was a bit of kind of magic to draw the lines between them. Now going forward, it's just whether it is restricted or it isn't. And how that will affect us is our financial statements and public filings will more clearly show what we have available for cash expenses and what is not available. So we've got a lot of assets which we can't access for cash purposes. We've got a building which cannot be turned into a liquid money very easily. We've got bequests, which we're not able to access due to legal restrictions. Those, however, do show up on our assets and liabilities statement. So at the end of the day, we're in a pretty good position, assets and liabilities. That will probably change to more clearly show the cash flow shortfall that we've essentially had in the past. So that's something to be aware of. Beyond that, I think a lot of the other changes will certainly affect how we look at our financial statements, but won't necessarily be giant changes for us. So, it just goes to show the importance of having accurate timesheets from our staff, following all of the various rules associated with accurately accounting what is restricted, what is unrestricted, what comes in, what categories we're booking things under. This is stuff that you already have to do for a lot of different purposes, both internal and external reporting, but some of it's now becoming mandatory under these FASB changes. I'm not really an expert on this, but I'm helping a lot of different nonprofits with their implementation of it. I know we had a discussion at the October meeting about timesheets, and so it's really crucial that we get our timesheets from our staff correct, because that feeds into all of these different things. And that was the main reason wanted to make sure that we went over it. So with that, Mr. Chair, I'll turn it back over to you. I'm sure other people would probably want to chime in with their experiences on it.
Okay. I have one quick question before I recognize Ms. Mattson, who raised her hand first. Do you have a good layman's sense of what direct or indirect presentation of cash flow is as it relates to these changes?
I think that's the different methods where you go from you add up your assets and liabilities, so to speak. I'm not sure on that, but that's my best guess. Mr. Longstress is an auditor, so he may know that terminology off the top of his better than I. But right now, there's kind of two different ways you can present it, and
Okay.
I think you have to do both right now. This makes you just have to choose one.
Okay. Ms. Mattson and then Mr. Redpath.
So I brought this up in September because I've been around for a few years here, and I kind of know the backstory on this. A few years ago, the LNC realized that when we put out our audited financial statements, there's this functional allocation where we kind of we realized it was just guesses at the end of the year. We guess how much staff time is spent on function A versus function B, and it was all guesses, and it didn't really account for the fact that, well, some staff members that work on that are paid at a different rate than staff members that work on something else, but we would allocate a percentage of total payroll, not really paying attention to who they were, what their pay rate was, that sort of thing. So the LNC adopted a policy that said staff timesheets are to track. In every discussion I've ever heard with the LNC, it said very reasonable, round it to the nearest hour. So, we're not asking for tracking 5-minute increments or anything. Nobody has ever asked for that. So staff timesheets should, broadly describe what functions they spent their time on so that we're not making up numbers at the end of the year. And then shortly after that, one of the audit reports noted that that's not happening, that we were still just making up numbers at the end of the year, even though we have this policy. And then the audit firm started pointing out to us that these FASB changes were coming into place where it wasn't just a good idea for us to do as a nonprofit, it was going to be required. And it's supposed to be kicking in 2018. They've warned us we're supposed to comply with this for 2018. And it also kind of necessitates changing a chart of accounts, and I know that a separate chart of accounts has been drafted by a CPA and presented that here's one that you could use, but I don't believe that's ever been implemented. So that's why I inquired about this in September, because, getting to the end of the year when we're supposed to have to comply with this on our next audit, and I wasn't real confident in the answer that I got. It sounds like we basically haven't done anything, and we're trying to find a way around it, is the way the answer sounded to me. So we have a new ED now, and this may be new to Ms. Doherty completely. So I guess at this point I'll just emphasize to her the importance of that policy and complying with these new requirements for our audits. And so we may need a new chart of accounts, and we definitely need staff time to be tracked to the nearest hour on their timesheets. Else we're not going to be in compliance with this functional reporting allocation.
Quick question, Ms. Mattson. You said a separate chart of accounts. You're saying that we would need to revise our chart of accounts to more accurately track with these requirements, but we wouldn't maintain two parallel charts of accounts. Is that right?
Right. Not two charts of accounts. We would just revise the one that we. Yeah. Basically, you have a matrix. You have these. Okay, we bought this piece of office equipment, but this office equipment is only going to be used for this one particular function. It only supports the convention or whatever. Okay, well, you charge that off to the convention activity. So you kind of have a matrix of accounts more so than just a list, but it's not terribly complex. It adds a couple of the pain is in changing the chart of accounts one time to start with, not in the ongoing daily data entry after that. Once it's set up, it's easy to use.
And that is a treasurer function working in tandem with our CPA. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay. Mr. Redpath.
I just wanted to say that it's my understanding that Mark Fry is satisfied with how things are being handled in the national office right now, and I just think that also that he does not want us to redo the chart of accounts when he was asked this a couple of months ago. But regardless, I think it's up to the executive director and the operations manager to speak with our auditor and get input from him to make sure we're doing the minimum, at least the minimum required by this FASB pronouncement. I would also say that I think the statement of cash flows that we referred to is the statement of cash flows is one of the statements in financial statements where you have cash flows from operating, investing, and financing activities, and there's a reconciliation from net income to cash flows from operations, and I think that's what we're talking about with respect to the different ways to present statements of cash flows. And I also think I can't quite say, I think we have about 1 minute to go on this item.
Okay, Mr. Redpath, I have a quick question for you. Should we not be in full compliance with these new standards, what are the consequences as far as you know them?
I guess the only consequence would be we would get and we are out of time on this matter as soon as I'm done speaking. And it would just be, the only consequence would be an exception to an unqualified audit opinion. I would think.
Ms. Bilyeu?
But we're out of time, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, I'm just trying to figure out. Ms. Bilyeu, go ahead.
I was just saying it sounded like we lost him. I couldn't hear what he was saying.
Oh, so what he said was that the consequence would be that we would receive an exception to an unqualified pass of an audit. So the auditor, if we were not in compliance, the auditor's report would then have an exception and a note that says these are the ways that the organization is not in compliance. And we are out of time. The next item on the agenda is sorry, I'm just going to my tab. Mr. Redpath had a proposed voting resolution for 10 minutes. So go ahead, Mr. Redpath.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Could the secretary put this on the screen, please? Okay, if I would, could I read this? It should take 1 to 2 minutes.
You can.
Okay. Whereas the plurality voting election method is the weakest voting method and a deeply flawed way of electing government representatives and officers, and whereas there are many alternatives to plurality elections, many of which have strong advocates promoting their specific benefits, and it is generally accepted by experts and advocates alike that there is no such thing as a perfect voting system. But each of these alternative systems generally regarded as being superior to plurality elections. And whereas there are many defenders of the status quo in the United States and its many state and local jurisdictions who are committed to preventing or limiting the adoption and implementation of these alternative voting systems that would give the public more effective choices on their ballots and thereby more power to hold their government representatives accountable, therefore be it resolved, the Libertarian National Committee is committed to the widespread adoption and implementation of alternative voting methods to replace plurality voting elections. That is my motion.
Second.
All right, hearing a second from Ms. Harlos. It's been moved and seconded. This is a public policy resolution. We did have previous notice. It was on the agenda of the last in-person meeting. I think that it's an odd number. Is it 3/4? Or is it 2/3? I think it's 3/4.
Let me look.
Public policy is weird in the policy manual.
It's bylaws.
Bylaws, sorry. Ms. Mattson, is it 3/4?
I think so. I'll go double check.
Thank you. I will proceed with it being 3/4 unless somebody points me to where I'm incorrect on that. Mr. Redpath, would you like to speak to your motion?
I would. I think that if not every ill that the Libertarian Party suffers is due to the plurality voting system in the United States, it's darn close. And that is it is critical to the future of this organization that the voting system in this nation be altered so that many fewer people feel they have to vote against the lesser of two evils. And I think that, as I said, just about all, perhaps all of the ills of this party can be traced to the voting system in the United States, and that's why I put this forward, along with the fact that there definitely is progress being made right now in the body politic in many locations to change the voting system to ranked choice voting, or in Fargo, North Dakota, approval voting. And I think that it's the Libertarian Party has been too silent on this issue, in my opinion, and I think this is a step in the right direction to speak up and be more involved in these matters.
Mr. Goldstein?
I call the question on this motion.
Mr. Goldstein moves to end debate on the motion. Is there objection? I am not seeing or hearing objection, and so we'll move to a vote. All in favor of the motion, please raise your hand. I have Redpath, Bilyeu, O'Donnell, Goldstein, Phillips, Smith, Bishop Henchman, Harlos, Longstreth, Hagan, and Merced, Van Horn, and Hewitt. So I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14 in favor. All opposed, please raise your hand. Dr. Lark, did you get in there in favor at the end? I want to confirm with Dr. Lark. Were you voting in favor, Dr. Lark? I'm going to call Dr. Lark in favor, and so that's 15 in favor. All hands down, please. And then all opposed, please raise your hand. I see no opposition, and so it will be 15-0, which is more than 3/4, which the resolution passes, and we'll move on unanimously, I believe, and we will move on to
thank you, everyone.
Move on to policy manual amendments regarding alternates for 15 minutes. and that is Ms. Harlos's motion. I just note, Mr. Merced and Ms. Van Horn, your hands look like they are still up. I don't know if that's a lag or not, but I just wanted to let you know that's what I see.
I am unable to put my hand down.
Oh, you're down now. So
yeah,
you,
okay. I think that might have been Karen Ann helping. If so,
oh,
thanks.
that's good. All right,
Yes.
Ms. Harlos, you have 15 minutes.
Okay, and yes, I am the one lowering hands when they are unlowerable. I have up on the screen the policy manual amendments that I am moving, where it is taking out any reference to alternates in the chart of committee selections and instead putting a new subtitle 5 under there, participation by alternates, which states explicitly excluded, an alternate may fill any appointment requiring an LNC member. This has been a source of confusion that I think we need to resolve. It didn't get resolved in bylaws as to whether or not an alternate is actually an LNC member. This bypasses that dispute and at least settles the questions for the committees. Ms. Bill, you and I had been discussing this since when it had first come up, and I do think we need to resolve this one way or another, and this is a way to resolve it. So I would move these policy manual changes.
Is there a second? I see a
Second.
from Mr.
Second.
Goldstein, and I hear him from a lot of other people. Ms. Harlos, do you need to speak to it any more than that?
Nope, I do not.
Okay. Ms. Matson, you are recognized.
So I'm going to speak against this. It doesn't, it still leaves in question what the deal is with the audit committee, because that's given to us by the bylaws, and that language needs to be changed in the bylaws to clarify that. Our policy can't really address that. And I believe we had different language, didn't we, for the December meeting? I think the first we saw this particular language was last night. And I'm concerned that there may be some side effect that's not immediately obvious, rather than us itemizing alternates are fine in X, Y, and Z locations. Now we're saying everywhere. And on the fly, my instinct is, if the argument is that this really won't make any change, well, why change it? And I'm worried about unintended side effects somewhere, though I haven't had very long to ponder if that is the case. If there is an example of us appointing something else that now it's an alternate that's eligible that wasn't before. I believe it would make an alternate eligible for the executive committee as well, which has not been the case before. So I'm going to vote against this. I think there could be side effects that we just haven't pondered yet, and it does not resolve the issue with the bylaw.
Okay. I just to quickly note something. If the bylaws are in conflict with the policy manual, that could be raised separately, and the bylaws would trump the policy manual. So if there is a question about who is on the audit committee vis-a-vis the bylaws, this change to the policy manual would not obviate that question. I just wanted to kind of clarify that piece of it. I have Ms. Harlos and then Mr. Hagan.
Certainly, and this, I did not propose language before. I had discussed it, but to address Ms. Matson's concerns, I actually would propose several amendments. I would propose an amendment to the executive committee to explicitly exclude alternates. So I'm typing that in there, excluding alternates. And I would propose an amendment unless explicitly excluded in this policy manual or the bylaws. And that would cover those particular concerns, I believe, of Ms. Matson. So those are amendments I am moving.
Are you moving them as a package or separate?
As a package, they go together.
Okay. Is there a second for Ms. Harlos's amendment to her motion?
Longstress seconds.
Longstress seconds. Is there anyone who wishes to be recognized to speak against Ms. Harlos's amendment to this proposal? Ms. Bilyeu, are you seeking to be recognized for that purpose?
I have a question for Ms. Harlow.
Go ahead.
I heard Ms. Matson mention executive committee as well, but I didn't hear you address that. Can you, is it addressed and did I just miss it, or?
It's the first of her two amendments that are as a package. She would modify the language under the executive committee to say 4 officers plus any number of LNC members excluding alternates. So alternates would explicitly be excluded in the policy manual definition.
Okay.
Okay.
Got it. Thank you.
Anyone else seeking to be recognized on Ms. Harlos's proposed amendment? I do not. Mr. Bishop Henchman, go ahead. As soon as you're unmuted, Mr. Bishop Henchman.
I just wanted to know if this proposed amendment alleviates Ms. Matson's objection or if she's still opposed.
That's a question for Ms. Matson. Go ahead, Ms. Matson.
It does address what I immediately noticed about executive committee. I still have my concern that there may be unintended consequences vis-a-vis other portions of the policy manual that we haven't considered, because the language that is being added at the bottom is very broad. It's not just for these committees, it's just any appointment that we make. And on the fly, my instinct is to be concerned about unintended consequences and vote no.
Okay. That, I think, answers Mr. Bishop Henchman's question. Ms. Harlos.
I don't think it's no broader than we've been interpreting it. We have been including alternates and everything. This is reflecting our practice, and I don't think it means everywhere in the policy manual. This is specifically under section 1.03, committee appointments in terms of office. Just like we don't think, you know, any of these other subsections. I would have no objection to changing the title to committee participation by alternates to make it clear that it's referring just to committees.
I just, for the reference of, I mean, just to let you know what the chair thinks as far as how it would be interpreted, I would interpret this as subsection 5 of section 1.03 of the policy manual to apply only to section 1.03 of the policy manual and appointments to committees as defined under 1.03. So I do not think this would modify as written any other places in which, and just to use an example that I don't even think is included, but let's say there was a policy manual section that allowed appointments to governmental bodies by the LNC. This would not cover that. That would have to be done separately in a separate section. So I don't think there is an amendment required in order for this to be interpreted as only affecting section 1.03.
2 minutes left.
2
minutes left, Ms. Matson.
So if this changes nothing about how we do it, why are we just doing the same thing with different language?
I think that's in the nature of debate. And then I will recognize Ms. Harlos.
Because we have argued about it each time, and this is what we've settled upon. This would keep us from arguing about it each time and have it just be settled. I am codifying the way we settle it each time, not the way it's ever not been debated, for the same reason that we changed the thing about whether or not there can be arguments with your email vote. We changed the policy manual to reflect our practice so that there wasn't future argument about what was intended by the policy manual. This is also a gift to future LNCs so that they don't have to argue about it either.
Ms. Bilyeu?
Yeah, I just basically was going to say what Ms. Harlos already said, but specifically it was related to when we put an alternate on the audit committee and it was questioned whether or not we could do that. We decided that we could because they are the same as LNC members. And so to me, this prevents us from ever having to have that conversation again.
Ms. Matson?
So I'll just wrap up by saying this, the only places that we've had arguments about it have been things that we don't control, like the bylaws. So this doesn't resolve that at all. And we've got the alternates itemized here on all these committees. So there's no argument about that when it's itemized.
Mr. Hagan.
Yeah, my question is on the affiliate support committee, deleted 4 alternates versus 3 LNC regional reps or alternates. Would that limit it to just regional reps, or should or alternates still be in there?
So the interpretation of that language that I would have is that the subsection 5 that would be added with this amendment would have the effect of those regional representatives could also, those spots could also be filled by alternates. So it would still have the pool for the affiliate support committee would be regional representatives or alternates by virtue of the language that would be added in subsection 5 rather than having it specifically stated in the member selection. So it would not change who would be appointed.
Okay.
Hi, Mr.
Or who is eligible, I should say. Mr. Redpath, has time expired?
Yes, it has.
Okay. So all in favor of this policy manual amendment, please raise your hand. I see O'Donnell, Redpath, Harlos, Longstreth, Merced, Hagan, Bilyeu, Phillips, Hewitt, Goldstein, and Smith and Bishop Henchman. I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. I have 12 in favor. Please lower your hand. All of those opposed, please raise your hand.
Mr. Chairman, are we voting on, did we do Ms. Harlos's amendment without objection? Or do we need to vote?
We
on
did
that?
Ms. Harlos's amendment without objection. This is the
Okay.
underlying substantive thing.
Okay, thank you.
So all opposed to the policy manual amendment, please raise your hand. I have Mattson, Lark, and Van Horn. And I forgot what number I said before for in favors, but I have 3 opposed.
At 12.
It passes. And did you say it was 12 in favor and 3 opposed?
Yes.
That's what I have, Mr. Chair.
Okay, so 12 to 3, it passes. The next item on the agenda is policy manual amendment regarding executive director selection. I have this for 15 minutes with Mr. O'Donnell proposing it. Go ahead, Mr. O'Donnell, and I think, Ms. Harlos, do you have it on the screen? I'm looking on 2 different screens. Okay, go ahead then, Mr. O'Donnell.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chair. I proposed this after reviewing and just sat down and thought about the process of picking the new ED, knowing that there were multiple candidates who were actively seeking the position, and how that would come to be chosen. It's not meant as a slight against anybody who was chosen by the chair to participate in the selection committee. It's I believe the choice of our new executive director for the permanent position is one of the more important things we're going to be doing in the very near future. And it shouldn't be something that's not taken seriously with as many eyes as possible and done as thoroughly as possible. In my opinion, the more eyes on a matter, the better. The more people with a structured process with a search committee, screening multiple candidates and transparently giving a report and making a recommendation to the LNC as a whole to choose it is a better process to get the right candidate rather than leaving it to a simple appointment of one individual. No offense meant to the chair. It's just, you may not always be the chair. We may end up in a situation in the future where this could be a crony appointment, and this is something I'd like to avoid in the future as well, to leave the decision of who essentially is the director of the party for all intents and purposes, not to a closed process, but a more transparent and open process with more full involvement from the entire board.
Okay. Just for housekeeping, is there a second?
Second.
Second from Ms. Harlos. She was very fast. All right. I think that was speaking to the motion, Mr. O'Donnell, or did you have more?
I believe it's self-explanatory, Mr. Chair, and yes, speaking to it.
Okay. To speak against, would anyone like to be recognized? Mr. Goldstein?
Yes, I would. On a couple different levels, I'm going to oppose this. First of all, a committee of 9 people on something that needs to be done in a quick and timely manner, I think is an unwieldy number of people. And I believe that we already have a process in place that should be underway and working on this hiring now. And if we interrupt it midstream by passing a new committee that will take forever to get reorganized, then we may not have an executive director until the Austin convention. So I'm pretty adamantly opposed to doing this at this time.
Okay. To speak in favor, Mr. Hagan, sorry, Mr. Phillips, are you in favor?
I am in favor, but mostly just a correction. I believe Mr. Goldstein said 9, and the way I read this, it's 6.
It is a total of 6. That is correct.
No, it says plus 3 additional LNC members, and plus the EPCC and 3 additional. I can't see what's underneath this participant screen, but it looked to me like there were 9 members.
Let me look.
I think
LNC chair, the EPCC, and 3 other people.
It can be read either way.
Okay.
I don't think.
Sorry. No. So slow down. I'm gonna read it. I have 6 members, including the LNC chair, the Employment Policy and Compensation Committee chair, and 3 additional LNC members. So the math is not right somehow, because that's 5. Mr. O'Donnell, can you clarify your intent?
Yes, my intent, I might have been. I had originally proposed 9 with a larger committee back several months ago, and this is the revised recommendation that I'd made in December, and I'd actually incorporated some of Mr. Goldstein's concerns back over the summer when I'd originally proposed it and agreed with him and his reasoning at that point. I missed the math in my edit, yes. The intent was to have the chair, the LNC chair, the Employment Policy and Compensation Committee chair, and an additional 4 LNC members for a total of 6 on the search committee.
Okay.
So that was a mistake on my part.
So 6 is the intent, and if there's no objection for just moving quickly, so it would be LNC chair, EPCC chair, and 4 additional LNC members. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So if Ms. Harlos can make that modification in what we're doing, that was the intent of the maker. It's 6 LNC chair, EPCC chair, and 4 additional LNC members. That would, if there's not objection to that procedure, that lets us continue with the debate on the substantive matter. Mr. Phillips, did you have further anything in favor?
Yes.
Go ahead.
Very simply, I agree with Mr. O'Donnell's reasoning in that this is a very important selection process, and that as many eyes and as transparent as we can get without getting into too much dragging along, as Mr. Goldstein was worried about. This is a good compromise between the two, and so I believe that this motion should go ahead.
Okay. I had Dr. Lark next on deck to speak against. Go ahead, Dr. Lark.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Hagan pointed out, I think quite correctly, in an email, I believe around December 1st, I happen to feel that if this motion passes, it actually contravenes the bylaws. The chair is actually given responsibility for hiring personnel, and this includes the executive director, I think that this policy manual change is in it would violate the bylaws, and I don't think we can pass it.
Are you raising that as a point of order, Dr. Lark?
I am indeed.
That's going to make me have to think. Can someone tell me the section of the, Mr. Hagan, since you're available, which bylaw section do you believe that this would violate?
Search for the word hiring and you'll hit it real fast.
Okay.
Article 6.
Article 6.
Section 3.
Give me one. Yeah, I'm pulling it up now.
Okay.
Article 6, Section 3, as adopted in New Orleans. Article 6, Section 3 says the chair shall provide at all conventions, all meetings. The chair is chief executive officer, full authority to direct business and affairs, including hiring and discharging of National Committee volunteers and paid personnel, subject to express National Committee policies and directives issued in the exercise of National Committee's plenary control and management of party affairs, properties, and funds. I understand the nature of the objection. I am going to rule that the motion is in order to be debated because of the second clause there, right after personnel, that it's subject to express National Committee policies and directives. This would be a policy and directive, if adopted, where the committee would be directing the chair to, or putting a directive to the chair. Mr.
Chairman, point of order. I don't believe that that's what it says.
Yeah. So I think I'm
Mr. Chairman, the language here reads, the LNC shall appoint and employ the executive director by a 2/3 vote.
Right. So
Mr. Chairman, if I may comment, I am aware of the clause that allows the LNC to set conditions. However, a condition that renders nugatory the provision of the bylaws is not valid.
Mr. Chair.
Yeah. So I hear Mr. Longstreth. Mr. Longstreth, if you could. If you have information that would help me.
Well, I do.
Go ahead.
I do, and the information that I have is right now, as the bylaw, or excuse me, as it is written in compliance with the bylaws, the policy manual still says that it has to have the approval of the LNC regardless. So I understand where Dr. Lark is coming from. However, the condition is already in there. We're not reinventing a condition. We're just raising that bar a little bit, and I think that would help you make your decision.
So here's what I would propose that would probably resolve the issue in order to make the motion in order for us to actually have a discussion on the substance. In order for this motion to be in order, the initial strike through of chair and replacement with LNC, that's the part that's out of order. So to have this motion have the effect that the maker wants, but still be in compliance with the bylaws, I believe that sentence should say, the chair shall appoint and employ the executive director with the approval of 2/3 of the LNC. I believe that allows the 2/3 approval without taking away the actual appointment power from the chair.
If this is for 10 minutes, Mr. Chairman, time's up.
Okay, time has expired. Is there objection to extending for 5 minutes so we can resolve this issue?
Yes.
Okay, Dr. Lark is objecting. So without a motion to extend.
I move to extend.
For how long, Mr. Phillips?
For 5 minutes.
Second.
Second.
Okay, so it's moved and seconded to extend for 5 minutes. All in favor of extending for 5 minutes, please raise your hand. I have Bilyeu, Hagan, O'Donnell, Goldstein, Longstreth, Smith, Harlos, Hewitt, and Phillips. That is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Is that 10? Sorry, this thing is scrolling on me. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 9. It's 9. 9 in favor. And now Mr. Bishop Henchman coming in real late. So I think that's 10. All opposed, please raise your hand. I have.
I'm sorry.
It's an
Opposed?
extension of time for 5 minutes.
No, I'm not opposed.
Okay, so I have Larkin Redpath opposed. That's 2. 10 to 2 will be extended for 5 minutes. Dr. Lark, are you seeking to be recognized?
Not at this moment, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. So I am going to the way I would like to proceed in order to allow this to move forward and be in order is to consider the motion with the chair being the appointing party in that first or second new paragraph, and with the two-thirds vote, the approval of 2/3 of the LNC in that second part of the sentence. I'm going to ask Mr. O'Donnell, does that still accomplish the intent of your proposal?
Yes, Mr. Chair, that would accomplish the intent.
Okay. I'm going to ask, is there anyone who objects to that interpretation of the motion and the revision in order to make it compliant with the bylaws?
Mr. Chairman, I would object. I do not think it is in compliance with the bylaws.
So you don't think that if it says the chair shall appoint and employ the executive director with the 2/3 of approval of the LNC?
That is correct, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. I'm going to rule that the modified one is in order. Dr. Lark, would you like to appeal the ruling of the chair?
I would, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Dr. Lark is appealing the ruling of the chair. I do not need to speak any further to the modified version. Dr. Lark, go ahead.
Mr. Chairman, it is, according to our bylaws, the chair has the right to appoint the executive director. The LNC has the right to remove the executive director with a majority vote. I do not see, I see this as imposing a condition upon the chair that is not consonant with our bylaws.
Okay. Would anyone else like to speak in favor of the ruling of the chair? Ms. Bilyeu, are you seeking to be recognized for this purpose? Or is that a ghost hand?
No, I am seeking to be recognized, but on the main motion.
Thank you. Mr. Longstreth, are you seeking to be recognized for discussion of this purpose?
I am.
Go ahead,
I am.
Mr. Longstreth.
So I just reiterate kind of what my comments were before. There is already this condition in there. Right now it currently reads, the chair shall appoint and employ the executive director with the approval of the LNC. All this does is clarify that the approval must be 2/3. I believe that the chair is correct in his interpretation and that this is just as compliant as the policy manual was previous to this proposal being made.
Okay. Is there anyone else who wishes to speak on the appeal from the ruling of the chair? I do not see any other hands going up. So we will move to a vote on an appeal from the ruling of the chair. I always get this. A yes vote is to overturn the ruling of the chair?
No.
No, yes vote is to sustain. So if you are in favor of sustaining the ruling of the chair, you vote yes. If you wish to overturn the ruling of the chair, you vote no. All in favor of sustaining the ruling of the chair, please raise your hand. I have Longstreth, Merced, O'Donnell, Smith, Hewitt, Phillips, Harlos, Redpath. That is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. I have 8 in favor of sustaining the ruling of the chair. All opposed, all who wish to overturn the ruling of the chair, which is in opposition to sustaining the ruling of the chair, please raise your hand now. I have Goldstein, Bishop Henchman, Lark, and Mattson. I have 4 opposed. I believe it is a majority to overturn the ruling of the chair. It fails to get a majority to overturn the ruling of the chair will be sustained. We will return to discussion on the main motion. I have next Ms. Bilyeu and then Dr. Lark. Go ahead, Ms. Bilyeu.
I have a couple of questions, I guess, for the maker of the motion, but I also would like to point out that even number committees are a terrible idea, and it would have been better had we left it with just 3, even though that was 3 additional LNC members, as it was previously stated, even though that was, according to the maker, an error. So that's one thing I wanted to address. And then also, how do we see this committee making this decision? Who's going to be determined to be the chair of that committee? How is the, if they can't come to a decision on someone and then there's no one to present to the LNC, what happens then? My concern here is that there needs to be one person responsible for a hiring decision. And while in spirit, I like the idea of it being a transparent and team effort to make this decision and to screen people and to interview people, et cetera. I still think there needs to be one person responsible for the decision, and we're either going to have the chair be responsible or we're going to have a committee be responsible. And even though we just, put in this language here, I feel like it's almost contradictory in a way, or one of that statement doesn't hold water because it's not technically the LNC chair who's ultimately making the decision or the appointment. It's the committee in this particular case. So if the maker has any input on that, I'd love to hear it. But for those reasons, I actually am opposed to this.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, time is up.
Time has expired. Dr. Lark and Ms. Mattson were seeking to be recognized. Ms. Bilyeu had at least said that she had questions for the maker. I would ask, is there any objection to extending for 5 minutes to allow the people who are seeking to be recognized to speak and get Ms. Bilyeu's questions answered?
Objection.
There is an objection from Mr. Redpath. All in favor of, is there a motion to extend for 5 minutes?
I so move.
Okay,
Second.
Carlos?
Second.
It's moved and seconded. All in favor of extending for 5 minutes, please raise your hand. This is in favor of the extension. I have Bilyeu, Mattson, Harlos, Longstreth, Hagan, Smith, Hewitt, O'Donnell, Bishop, Henchman. That is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9.
I did not intend to have my hand up. Sorry.
Okay.
I hadn't lowered it.
That's okay. So I have Mattson, Harlos, Longstreth. That's 3. Hagan, Smith, Hewitt. That's 6. O'Donnell, Bishop, Henchman, and Phillips. That's 9. So we ended up with 9 anyway due to some slow hands. All opposed to the extension of time, please raise your hand. I have Goldstein, Redpath, Lark, and Merced. That is 4. So 9 to 4, the extension of time will pass. We have 5 more minutes on this item. Ms. Bilyeu, to the extent that you had specific questions for Mr. O'Donnell, can you restate what the specific questions are so that we can maintain the order of the order in which people get to speak? But if you have a specific question for the maker, please can you reiterate the question?
Okay, I guess there were a couple. One, would the maker be willing to change it back to 3 so that it would be an odd number? But my main concern is what is his intention or his vision for this committee in terms of how they are organized and how they come to a decision on who to appoint.
Okay, Mr. O'Donnell, you're recognized to answer those questions.
I would not be opposed to an odd numbered committee. That was my original intent, with albeit with a much larger committee when I had originally made the motion last summer. As far as my vision or what I would assume the structure of the committee being appointed, the committee would be appointed by the LNC chair. I would assume the LNC chair would chair that search committee and direct its operation. Being the LNC chair would be the one ultimately making the appointment with the recommendation of that committee.
Okay. So I next had, to be recognized, I had Dr. Lark on deck, then Ms. Mattson, then Ms. Van Horn. So go ahead, Dr. Lark.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. It has been suggested that the policy manual already includes language concerning with the approval of the LNC, that is correct. I happen to think that that also violates our bylaws. The bylaws give the power to the chair to hire. It gives the power to the LNC to dismiss.
Okay. Ms. Matson.
I'm going to vote against this change. The chair has already indicated he intends to work with the EPCC. So we already have a committee of 3 working with the chair to, interview and pick a qualified candidate. We appointed people to the EPCC because of their experience in the subject matter. And what this would do is say, well, we're only going to use one of those 3 people and instead do 3 other people from the LNC. And I just don't see the substantive value of saying we're just shuffling the deck chairs here and it doesn't really make a difference. Let's just stick with the EPCC and the chair working together, which is the way the chair has indicated he's going to proceed with this. And I just don't see the benefit of this, so I'll vote no.
Okay. Ms. Van Horn.
No, I have a privileged point of inquiry, Mr. Chair.
Go ahead, Ms. Harlos.
There was a question in chat that I may have incorrectly typed something. Is the intention here to be with the approval of 2/3 of the LNC or with the approval of 2/3 vote of the LNC, as those 2 things are in fact different?
It would be 2/3 vote of the LNC. I did not mean to strike out vote.
Thank you.
Okay. Ms. Van Horn.
Thank you. Ms. Matson covered most of what I was going to say. I remember in our previous discussion that Nick had stated that he would be consulting with and bringing in members of the Employment Compensation Committee, 3 people, and I think that's sufficient. She also pointed out that those people were actually appointed to that committee because of some of the experience they have in hiring and compensation and searches of this nature. And I have confidence in the people that we have on these committees. So I will be voting no on this motion. I do not think it adds anything to our executive director search.
Okay. I'm going to go to Mr. Longstreth before Mr. O'Donnell because I don't think Mr. Longstreth's spoken on the underlying motion yet. So go ahead, Mr. Longstreth.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm actually going to do something. I have a motion. I want to move to strike the first paragraph, which would essentially strike the committee, but keep the 2/3 requirement that we amended previously, if that makes sense.
Yep, it's a motion to amend the motion to strike the first paragraph of the motion. So that would make the only amendment to the policy manual, should the amendment pass, would be that the chair would be appointing and employing with the approval of a 2/3 vote of the LNC. Is there a second for Mr. Longstreth's amendment?
Second.
Oh, who was it?
Smith.
Okay. Mr. Smith seconds. Mr. Longstreth, would you like to speak to your amendment?
I would. Just a couple of points. I've heard the objections, the most recent objections I've heard all revolve around the idea of creating a new committee, and I agree that can be a bit excessive. And while I do think it's important enough that we should have a committee specifically dedicated to this, I don't think it is worth us voting down the entire measure over that point of debate. And so I would say that we allow the EPCC to do their job in vetting and seeking applications and do everything that they're supposed to as far as that. All that I ask is that if we can pass this motion to allow 2/3 approval of the LNC versus a majority. The reason why this is a very, very important decision and one that honestly we need to be transparent to those that we represent as a whole, and they need to know that this LNC as a whole group supports whomever the chair chooses, that it isn't the chair going rogue or that it isn't the chair in one faction going rogue or anything like that. It needs to be an LNC and chair decision. So I would just urge that if we can strike the first paragraph, that this would be more agreeable, I think, to most parties, and then we can debate the 2/3 number.
Time, Mr. Chairman.
Time has expired. There is an amendment under consideration. If there is not an extension of time, we will proceed to votes on all previous questions. Is there a motion to extend? It was 5 minutes, and from whom?
O'Donnell.
Mr. O'Donnell moves to extend for 5 minutes. I've heard the objection. I figured that, given that the last 2 have had objection, I kind of baked that in. So all in favor of an extension for 5 minutes, please raise your hand. Ms. Van Horn, are you in favor or is your hand just still up from before?
It's still up. I'm unable to put it
Okay,
down.
got it. That's just checking. So I have in favor of the extension for 5 minutes. I have O'Donnell, Longstreth, Hagan, Harlos, Phillips, Smith, and Bishop Henchman. That is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Wait, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. That's 7. All opposed to the extension of time, please raise your hand. I have Goldstein, Merced, Lark, Hewitt, Redpath, and Van Horn. That is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 opposed. I believe motions to extend require 2/3.
2/3, Mr. Chairman.
And so the motion to extend fails. And so we will proceed to votes on the previous questions. The first vote will be on the Longstreth amendment, which would be to strike the first paragraph of the O'Donnell proposal. A yes vote would be to adopt that amendment and make that the proposal under consideration. A no vote would be to keep that first paragraph in what we eventually vote on. If someone can put Ms. Van Horn's hand down. Okay, all right. So all in favor of the Longstreth amendment to strike the first paragraph, please raise your hand. I have Redpath, Hagan, Merced, Goldstein, Bilyeu, Smith, Van Horn, Longstreth, Harlos, Bishop Henchman, and Matson. That is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Sorry, am I scrolling? 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. I have 11 in favor of the Longstreth amendment. All opposed, please raise your hand. I have, I believe Van Horn voted in favor, so I have O'Donnell and Hewitt opposed. So I have 11 to 2, the Longstreth amendment is adopted. So now the motion that we are considering and voting on would be to modify section 2.09.4 of the policy manual to have it read, the chair shall appoint and employ the executive director with the approval of a 2/3 vote of the LNC. And that is the only change that is currently in the underlying amendment. That is the what is being considered. That is what we're voting on. So a yes vote would make that modification to the policy manual. A no vote would leave that sentence saying the chair shall appoint and employ the executive director with the approval of the LNC. Does everyone understand what we're voting on? I mean, if you don't, you have to say something, but I'm trying to be clear and going slow. So all in favor of the amended policy manual amendment, please raise your hand. I have Merced, Smith, Harlos, Longstreth, O'Donnell, Bilyeu, Van Horn, Hagan, and Phillips. That is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. I have 9 in favor. All opposed, please raise your hand. I have Goldstein, Lark, Redpath, Hewitt, Bishop, Henchman. That is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I have 5 opposed. So I have 9 to 5. The amendment passes and the policy manual will be amended. And let me just pull that. You have that on the screen? Okay. That is the correct language. So that amendment is adopted. And I think that was the final item on the agenda. Is that correct? Announcements for 5 minutes. And Daniel Hayes has video. Now he doesn't. All right. Are there any announcements? Anyone seeking to be recognized to make any announcements? Mr. Hewitt.
Can you hear me? Yeah, this is
Go ahead.
Okay.
Yeah, I would like to let everybody know that in about a little bit less than 2 days, our chair will be swearing me in as in my new office. So I'm really proud to have the party represented, and especially our chair.
And I just want to say thank you again to Mr. Hewitt for honoring me with that request to swear him in as supervisor of Riverside County, California, and offering to put me up at his house before that. So I'm excited and looking forward to that trip to swear him in on Tuesday. Any other announcements? Hearing and seeing no one seeking to be recognized, we will be adjourned by orders of the day. 4 minutes early at, Ms. Mattson asks, Jeff, what time on Tuesday is the swearing in?
It's actually right at 9 o'clock is when it happens, 9 a.m. at the County Administrative Center in downtown Riverside.
Okay. So if anyone is in California and able to be at the County Administrative Center in downtown Riverside, I believe it would be open to the public because it is at the beginning of a public meeting, is it not?
Right.
What book are you being sworn in on?
The Hare Krishna. I don't know. That's a good one.
Use a pocket constitution.
If
I should. So, although I carry the evangelicals and Mormons and everything else, so you gotta give them the love too.
Yeah. All right. So we are adjourned. Thank you all so much for your participation in the meeting. I think this went fairly smoothly, and we will enjoy the rst of your weekend.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you.
All right. Bye-bye.